So, I mean, that's where it stands.
Well, of course, there are more alternatives than proceeding or going to court, which would be to reconsider the issue, specifically because apparently after my initial objections, there was enough of a view that what was done initially was improper, that the commission felt the need to call a special meeting to readjust the way that it was done. That alone, frankly, should argue for caution in this matter, since clearly what was done the first time was deemed to be inadequate.
And that is why we went ahead with the special meeting to correct the inadequacies of the previous meeting. Since when I started looking through it and discovered that one commissioner cannot appoint another commissioner, you cannot have one vote, but in following that up, we determined that since there are two sitting commissioners, the other commissioner could vote for himself, and that was what we did. Since I made the nomination of Commissioner Bockus, and he seconded the vote, and it was passed by the two sitting commissioners, and that was on the consent of the, basically agreement of our attorney, and in view of Robert's Rules of Order, and statements from the state county auditor, he basically said they put it back in behalf of our attorney. It's up to him to make that decision as to whether there's any error there. So we left it at that, and I feel that there's no further avenue of pursuit. That's where we're going to leave it.
Well, I believe it's a stretch to state that the state and county auditor said that it was up to our attorney.
Well, would you like
Sitting commissioners are prohibited, leaving commissioners, for example, if they retire, are committed from, are prohibited from even assessing whether or not a new candidate is a viable candidate. Given that that is not legally possible, the actual voting for oneself to take a vacant seat, in my opinion, is likely to be a questionable practice. It certainly does not look good. The reason that I brought this issue forward in the first place is that after the initial appointment, several of the Port District citizens who live near me asked me what had occurred, and I really didn't know. I could not see, based on what had happened, that the appointment was done correctly. I had conversations with the port attorney twice, and my reception was less than satisfactory. His last meeting with me also ended in an invitation to sue the port, which I think is tremendously counterproductive. I had an interview with, talk with you at Burger King at 1 p.m. just before Christmas, and I laid out some of my objections, which you now say are valid, and at the time you told me you didn't care. I twice then rephrased the question that if you became aware that the appointment occurred in a fashion that was contrary to the laws of the state of Washington, would you have a problem with that? Would you care to tell the public what you told me at that time?
I said yes, and that's why we had the second meeting, and we redid it, because in reading over the law says if there's only one commissioner, you cannot appoint it. But then, you know, since we only had one vote, we revisited that. We basically contacted the state auditors. Since there was only one vote for him, because I voted for him, that part I was not aware of. And so you brought that up, and I agreed with that. And so then we recalled a special meeting. We checked to see if he could vote for himself, and just like you voted for yourself when you ran for
It's clearly not the same once you're on the board.
Well, yes, I suppose in a way you could look at that, but I mean, you could also look at it the same fact. There's nothing to prevent him, in looking through Robert's Rules of Order or anything else, there's nothing to prevent him from voting for himself. And
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
yes,
Robert's Rules of Order are rather clear that a motion can only be made, that is a motion for reconsideration by a member who voted on the winning side. It's very clear. Under the circumstances, the motion is not well founded, and we should move on to the agenda.
okay, thank you.
I'd like to make one closing comment if possible.
Sure.
First of all, with regard to our conversation and the direct question that I asked you, the answer that you gave today is not the answer I recall you giving in that meeting. Secondly, the only reason that you had this change in plan and the additional meeting is because I raised objections. It was not due to any due diligence on the attorney's part because he had not thought of that prior. And I suggest that perhaps he has again not considered the matter fully and that we should delay. He is correct that under Robert's Rules of Orders, the motion can only be reconsidered by somebody who voted positively for it before. And that's you at this point because there is no other person in the room who is a sitting commissioner who voted positively for that. So I would ask you specifically to move to reconsider that motion.
I will not do that. So, we'll now open the meeting for public comments. Oh, yeah, oh, yes. Right, we forgot to do the other. Okay, would you do that?
I, Arnold Bockus, do solemnly swear that I am a citizen of the United States and the state of Washington, that I am legally qualified to assume the office of Port of Poulsbo District Number 12, Commissioner, Position 2, that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States and the state of Washington, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of this office to the best of my ability. Thank you.
And I guess you see something. Okay, do we have any public comments?